Hi people, I'm Tom Bennett. Welcome to my abode, my studio in Brooklyn, New York, and I'm here to do a quick demonstration tutorial about how I make monotypes. Now forgive me if this is not absolutely professional, it's kind of amateurish. I'm half asleep. It's COVID virus week here, life, and I'm not, I'm half asleep. Here is a piece of plexiglass. I usually use opaque white. Sometimes I use clear, but in this case I'm using white because it's easier to see. My plexiglass, and I normally, often, not always, but I often start with a wash. I use oil paint, oil inks, and turpentine as a solvent. So the inks and the paint, for instance, on a palette, I will start by taking a wash to give it a neutral medium value tone. That would be, that gives it that medium tone, so you can come in with the darks and the highlights. And the way you make, of course, highlights is by removing the ink. It's an additive, reductive process. Anyway, I'll put down some ink and let that sit for a bit to tack up. Making a monotype like this with oil-based inks and paints with turpentine, it's a matter of allowing the ink to dry to a certain point. It's a lot of experimentation. I'm going to just show you the basics here. You're going to need to practice and experiment with this. But so here I've allowed the ink wash to tack up a bit, and I usually start drawing. Now sometimes I draw with the pencil, just sort of make lines in the ink, or I'll use a small brush and start drawing that way. So here it goes. I'm just going to, and the wash is still a little damp, but that's okay. I'm going to make some marks here. And you all are going to use your own choices of drawing, making your marks or whatever. This is just one of many methods I use. For demonstration purposes, sometimes I'll come in with some black, some darks. I'll use my finger to push it around. You can use any tools you want. Of course, you use a cloth or a piece of cotton or some paper towel to remove the ink, which creates the highlights. And you go back, and I go back and forth. It's an intuitive process, and it just takes some experimentation and finding what you. I'll often use a straight edge, or you can use any kind of a straight tool to make lines into the ink. As an example, I can use the straight edge to come back, take a swat and cob, cotton swab, not swat and cob, and use that. Come back again with a rag, You can see I'm removing the ink. I'll come back sometimes and I'll bring more ink back in. It's all about experimentation, and as, I don't know, Bob Ross would say, just have fun. I often use a razor blade to make marks. Coming in, and razor blade is quite nice if it's a clean razor blade, and it can create all sorts of interesting form, accidental lines. I use it to create a sharp line into the ink here, for instance. And here I'll come in with a cotton swab, for instance, and remove some ink, come back, and make more marks. Bring my finger in. As an example, I hate to use the phrase "have fun with it," but at this point, I'm cognitively sort of semi-neutral, and so I'm just coming out. I'll just have to use cliches like that. But pushing the ink around like this is a part of the fun, and you can bring your finger in and drag it, and as you go along, you can constantly be manipulating. If you make a mistake, it doesn't matter. There is no such thing as a mistake, and you can always come back and often fix things. And I'll often take some turpentine and just drip it onto the matrix, or even spray it like this. And what happens is the turpentine, the wash, breaks up, and interesting things can happen. Interesting things can happen. Wow, this is a messy video, but you do that. You let it tack up a bit, see what happens. And go from there. Sometimes I'll bring in a little red. For instance, I'll throw something down like that. So for the purposes of this demo, it's done. Let's go print. We're going to go to the press downstairs. And here we are in the basement print shop. I call it the dungeon. And I've got my press here. It's a medium-sized, relatively small to medium-sized press. This bed is about maybe 22 by 36 inches, I think. And I've got the plate on the bed, and I've got the paper soaking in here. It's a Canson medium to heavyweight paper. Let that soak for, no less than 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, I'd say, or more. And then I'm going to blot it and print. Very well. The paper, the blotted paper, is now sitting on the plate. Try to make sure that you place the paper evenly so the margins are relatively square. I then bring down the newsprint over that and the felt blankets. I've got the pressure set to something that's firm. You have to experiment. It all depends on how thick the gauge of your plate is, the plexiglass plate. But you want it to be quite firm. But again, experiment. Experiment with the pressure. And so here we go. Keep the blanket flat. Make sure that it's relatively square so it doesn't get caught in the roller. This is thousands of pounds of pressure. I'm going to just release some of the pressure on this because it's just a tad too strong. This, of course, is an etching press. If you don't have a press and you're going to be trying to do it using a burrow or a burin or a spoon or some other tool like that, you're going to have very different results. The reason I get all the detail is because of the press. And we shall now see the results. The finished Monotype for demonstration only. So I thank you for watching. This has just been a very sort of straightforward, practical kind of video. We can talk more in other videos about details, about concept, about other things, but I appreciate it. And make monotypes. Have fun. Thank you.